the show. I'm Tosh Taylor.
And I'm Jenna Morton, and today we are talking math. Now don't run away, because that's exactly why we need to talk about it.
Yes.
And we have brought in the perfect guest to talk about all your math anxiety, and maybe you love math, and then you're going to love this even more, because we have Sarah Noseworthy with us here today. Hello, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much for having me.
I say this all the time, but I am excited. I love this. So yes, for those people who don't know you already, and why don't you tell us a little bit about your role in the math world?
Sure. Well, like you said, Sarah Noseworthy. I have been a certified teacher since 2004, and I've been teaching in some capacity ever since there. I didn't start off as like a lover of math. It wasn't even one of my teachable subjects when I did my education degree. I had a biology major and English minor, so I figured I was going to teach one of those. But my first teaching job, because I was a science major, science and math are often paired together as a teaching assignment. So I started teaching math, and I started loving math and loving teaching math. And I could see really like how important math was to a kid's self-esteem, and when they felt like they didn't get it, they could be really down on themselves. But when they started to get it, like that light bulb moment, and they would just light up, like I got addicted to that. I got addicted to like teaching them and improving their self-esteem at the same time. So yeah, I taught in the public school system for a while, Nova Scotia, New Brunswick. I did a year in Australia teaching, and I left the public school system in 2014 after having my second child. I wasn't planning on leaving forever. I just decided I needed an extended maternity leave for my second one. And just opportunities came, paths went different directions, and I ended up in the private sector. And that turned into building a tutoring business and being the education coordinator for the Moncton Wildcats. And here I am now, just still teaching, but I'm not in the system anymore.
That's incredible, because our kids are actually very close to the same ages.
Yes.
And I wonder if having them and then watching them in the public school system and them starting to learn grasping math, and for me it is trying to wrap my head around new math.
Yes.
And the new way of doing things. I was going to say, if we could get into that and you could explain it to me, that would be swell.
We only have 20 minutes.
Crash course.
Yeah. I will come see you in a private session. But watching your kids also try to pick it up, I'm sure was helpful in like, okay, so here's what I'm also going to use in my private practice.
Yeah, definitely. It's funny, I tutor a lot of my kids' friends, and so I really have an inside view into what is going on in the public school system math classrooms through my own kids, but also through the kids that I tutor. And should we talk about the new math thing for a second?
Yeah, absolutely.
There's probably some people listening whose kids
for
aren't
sure.
in school yet, and they're like, new math.
What's happening with math?
Yeah.
Okay, math is not new. There's no such thing as new math, but the way we're teaching it is very different from how it was taught when we were in public school and when our parents were in public school. So there's a lot of parents, like you are certainly not alone, when you see math homework coming home and it looks nothing like what you would have seen when you were a child. And I totally get that. The thing about how it's much more visual. And it's getting kids to like play with numbers, break numbers down, see numbers in different ways, and to think flexibly about their math, not just have them memorize procedures, because that's kind of how we were taught, right? This is how you add these, you carry this, procedural. And that's good for some kids. Some kids will fly with that. But a lot of kids, they can follow it for a moment, but then when they don't have an example or they don't have a teacher next to them, they lose track, and they can't then apply a skill to like a problem-solving situation. So what we're doing now is we're trying to not rush to an algorithm or a procedure. We're trying to get kids to think flexibly about math and break down numbers and play with numbers and make it visual. And then they can see why a certain algorithm might work. And that's kind of like a final step. It's like, okay, let's make it efficient now, but you can do it because you've already learned all of the nuts and bolts and all the pieces that show you why that algorithm might work. So math is not new, but the way we're teaching it certainly is different.
I think it's very effective from what I've seen, because I've watched this with my kids who are now in grades 7 and 5, and at first it was kind of, I knew it was out there because I have math teachers in my family, but
Yeah.
I hadn't seen it firsthand. And then I was like, oh, okay, this is interesting. And I find it hard to follow
Yes.
some of the way
Yeah.
they talk about math, but then I watch them be able to apply that to these more complicated questions as they get into them, and they can do math so much easier in their heads because they understand better those concepts of what they're counting and how they're counting. I'm like, oh, I just know how to carry the one.
Exactly.
So, like anything beyond that, I'm taking out the calculator because I
it's
don't
this.
retain it. Like I did calculus, and I'm like, I
Right?
pull out my calculator to do 2 times 2.
That is so common. That is so common. And it's so funny too, like the people in our generation and older who are kind of have an aversion to the new math, or like, this is weird. That's almost like proof that the old way of teaching it didn't work, because you're so narrow-minded when it comes to math that you can't apply it to like a broader situation. So I would just say, yeah, keep an open mind.
Oh yeah,
And that you clearly do have one.
I'm like, oh,
Yeah.
when they're asking for help, I'm like, I know how I would do it, but that's not what you've been learning. So I'm like, okay, call your grandfather.
Yeah.
The math teacher.
Yeah.
Oh, that's funny.
Yeah.
It is, and that's interesting, but I think it also kind of leads into our conversation today about math anxiety, right? Because I was horrible at math, I'll admit it. It was never my subject. And my husband is fantastic at math. So luckily they've got him backing them up at home, but he doesn't understand the new math either. And then when I'm sitting there and I'm like, how come I can't figure out what she should be doing in grade 4?
Right.
You know what I mean? So anyway, so this is where the math anxiety comes in for an adult. But then I think I push it off onto my kids too, right? Because I can't understand it. So then I'm like, if it's supposed to be easy, it's not easy for you, it's not easy for me, then we're all worked up about it, right? It's
Yeah.
just like this big cluster.
And it can snowball for sure.
Yeah.
And it's probably like maybe some struggles you had when you were younger have like built up this dialogue in your head that like, I'm not a math person, or math is just not my thing. And that's something that I have a sign in my classroom that says, how to be a math person. Step 1, do math. Step 2, be a person. That's all you need to do, right? Everybody is a math person. So I like to demystify the whole idea that you have this math gene or you don't, because we don't think of that about with reading, right? We don't think like, oh, I'm just not a reading person. I'm just not a writing person. It should be the same with math, but we've kind of gotten used to almost like joking about our math struggles and like laughing about, oh, I'm just not a math person, or, you know, but we shouldn't. We should all realize that like we are all capable. Now, the negative experiences and even like math trauma, that's a real thing that you've had growing up. That's valid, and that certainly affects how you see math now, and it could really affect how you talk about math around your kids too. So that's something that I really push with parents too, is totally understand you don't have a happy relationship with math right now. Like, that's not your fault. It's valid, but we need to be careful that we're not perpetuating that with our kids too. So just, if you can change the dialogue from like, oh, we're just not math people, to I struggled with math. Math was hard for me, and you know, that's just my truth, my reality. But I know that I can learn math. I know that if I have the right supports and if we work hard together, like, we can learn this together. So kind of make it like a we're in this together kind of thing, rather than like, we're just not math people.
So I'll take that out of my vocabulary.
Josh
Please
is signing
do.
yourself up for tutoring. Now.
I really should though.
I was thinking about, like, do you ever have parents reach out and be like, you know, can we do a group session, or can we do a parent session on the new math, or this idea of like breaking down, like, how do we talk about a subject that we didn't love? How do we not pass that on?
Yeah, I haven't had parents specifically reach out to me, but we've definitely just had conversations. A lot of my students, parents, and I will have these conversations, and it has gotten me thinking, like, maybe there is a demographic of parents out there that would appreciate some sort of parent and teacher session where we could kind of like demystify a lot of the stuff that they're doing in elementary math. I'm open to that.
Because by
Call
the time
me.
they get to like middle school, high school, you kind of have to. I feel like you're like, no, I'm leaving you in your teacher's hands.
And if they
Like-
have the tools, like if they've had a strong base, then yeah, they have everything they need for middle school math, for sure.
I think something that I see you doing to help kind of debunk the stigma around math is you make it fun. Like, you're really, really great on your social media of posting fun videos and doing cool reels about the ways that you're teaching kids math. Can we talk a bit about that?
Yes. Math has to be fun. No one's going to learn when they're stressed. Like, your brain biologically is not going to take in information if you're in an anxious or stressed state. So first and foremost, we have to have fun. So we incorporate a lot of games into all of our math sessions. And yeah, that's something I do like to share online because it's something that's so easy to do at home. Like, deck of cards, you have so many options for just learning numbers and doing all your operations, learning place value. Like, there's so much out there. Yes, math has to be fun, and it's a huge part of how I tutor in my studio. Yeah.
Go ahead.
I was just going to say, to make math fun, there's a game called Prime Climb.
I have it. Oh yeah.
Love it. Love it. My kids love it. It's all about prime numbers, which I was like having that like flashback anxiety. I'm like, oh, that's where they started to lose me.
But that's good. Nice grade 6 outcome
the
there.
Game was
Yeah.
it was like, no, this is in my like watching my like young elementary kids get into this math game. I'm like, this is crazy. This is a fun board game. Okay.
Interesting.
That's a really popular one. Yeah.
There's one that my kids will play online. Is it Zorbits? Is that the online? Is that
That's
math? Okay.
Yep, that's a math platform.
Okay. And do we like it?
Yeah. Oh,
Okay,
yes,
I'm
for
like-
sure.
I'm like, wait,
yeah,
wait.
I know my kids
it's
like
not
it.
something that I've ever assigned as a teacher,
Okay.
but I see my kids using it and they like it. So
Yeah.
if they're having a positive math experience, I'm happy.
Yeah.
I think at least a lot of the Anglophone East schools had access to it during
COVID,
yeah.
lockdowns and pandemics and stuff.
Yes.
That was something that it was like, oh,
Yeah.
the kids can go online and play, but it's actual like these are real educational games, not just something that someone has slapped the word on necessarily.
Yes. Yeah. No, it's legit.
Yes.
Yeah.
Maybe talk a little bit more about that idea of making math fun and showing how it actually is something that people are using in their daily lives. You know, I think that was a message we heard a lot as a kid. You know, maybe like, especially among yourself, you're like, well, I don't need that. I'm going to work in an office. I'm not going to go build buildings. I don't need to know math equations.
Yeah. Well, I mean, there's a certain amount of truth. Like, the higher level math, most of us are never going to use it in our everyday life. But the stuff right up through middle school and in high school, like even linear algebra, like linear equations are super important in the financial world, and just making decisions about your finances. It's really good to understand percentages, decimals, how to use them, how to even like use your calculator to plug in a percent so that you can figure out what your interest is going to be on your car loan. Like, I have a big series of posters in my classroom that's have you use math today, and there's probably 24 different examples, like whether it's the rhythm in a dance, like when you're reading sheet music, there's quarter notes, there's whole notes, there's half notes, all the way to like financial math things. It's super applicable. Yes, I love showing kids like, oh, this is like actually math you'll actually use in real life. And yeah, there's some stuff like I'm working with high school students on quadratic equations. Maybe you won't use this, but you need it to graduate. You need it to get into, physiotherapy programs. So let's just get through this together. And it's okay to acknowledge that not all math is going to be applicable in your life, but it's kind of a means to an end at the moment.
Well,
Yeah.
and you don't know until you try it. Maybe
Exactly.
Yeah, maybe it is going to be your thing, and you're going to go on to
Yeah.
become a math professor or a math teacher.
That's the thing you don't know. And even if it's not a skill that you're going to use, you're still like strengthening your brain. Like, you're working out your brain muscles. You're making new neural pathway connections in your brain. Like, you're just developing your brain. So even if that specific knowledge isn't going to come in handy down the road, it doesn't matter, because you've still learned something. You've still, grown your knowledge.
There's another math that they don't tell you you're going to have to use when you become an adult, and that is toilet paper math.
I don't know this. I don't know this one.
Working out what the best deal at the grocery store
Oh my goodness.
Based on how many rolls are actually in the package, and then how many are they little rolls, or are they double
Consumer
rolls?
math,
And, like,
absolutely, yes.
And it doesn't just apply to toilet paper. It's literally anything at the grocery store.
Anything
But-
in like a multi-pack. I used to
Yeah.
bring my middle school class on a field trip to the grocery store every year, and they would have like kind of like a treasure hunt, and they had to find unit prices for things and get deals. Like,
That's
yeah,
fantastic.
It
I love
is.
that.
I would have found that so useful. Maybe not in middle school, but eventually I'd have been like,
Oh,
this
that teacher knew
Noseworthy
what they
told
were
me.
doing.
they'll remember me one day in the toilet paper aisle.
So every teacher wants to be remembered, right?
Whatever. Yeah.
So very true.
Oh my goodness.
So let's talk about SN Learning Studios, because I want to know about your space and how you function. Is it one-on-one, or can you have a group of kids in there? What's your sessions like?
Yes and yes.
Okay.
So the SN Learning Studio was officially born in the fall of 2021. I had been tutoring privately one-on-one in my home, in their homes, for a couple years leading up to that. I also worked at Riverbend Community School for a little bit, and that kind of is what opened the door to tutoring. I would tutor through their center, and I started just building up more and more tutoring students. And it got to the point where I was like, okay, I'm at my max of what I can do as is right now. And there was just, you know, sometimes like the stars just align. There was a classroom sitting in Riverview at the old Gunningsville School, one room left. The building is shared by Riverbend and Eastgate. There was one little room there left, and I was like, that's mine.
Yeah.
So I got it. I opened up the studio 2 years ago, and so I do groups. I've actually just hired another teacher to help me so that I can make the groups a little bit bigger. But I usually have a 4-to-1 student to teacher ratio, or right now what we're doing is 2 teachers to 5, sometimes 6 students. But they're all within the same kind of age range. So I've got like a group of 4 or 5 kids, I've got a group of 5, 6, a group of 6, 7, and a group of high school kids. So yeah, I've got several groups going. I do some online one-on-one tutoring. That's all booked up. They're kids who have been with me for 5 years or plus. So yeah, and what I'm working on now, because like I do want to help more kids, but I only have so much time in a day. I'm working on an online course. So I did launch it in June. It's for grade 4 and 5 kids. It's meant to be like a middle school prep math course. So here's all the skills you need to take from elementary school so that you're like ready to roll in middle school. So I launched that in June. It was like a beta launch. It wasn't the full course. It was kind of like my first iteration of the course, and it's gone well, and I'm ready to launch the full course this month. I don't have a date yet, but yeah, sometime in November.
That's fantastic.
Yeah.
I love that idea.
Yeah.
And talk a little bit, I know everything will vary, but for price point, for people who are like, oh, maybe tutor, like, I love tutoring, but it's too much. Well, how much actually is it? Because
Yeah.
I think people sometimes build up in their heads what they think things are.
Yeah, well, it's not cheap. The groups are $50 per session, and then it does range from there. Like it'll go up, obviously, for a one-on-one. It depends on the age and the time that we'll be working together. So it goes up from 50.
When you say $50 for a session for the group, is a session one sitting, or is that a set of weeks?
One sitting.
One
Yeah.
sitting. Okay.
Yeah. So that's why I did want to do the online course, and I want to put more out there in the online space so that people can access for free or for a much lower price point. Yeah.
Well, I think being a parent, it is quite obvious when the difference. I've had last winter, or last school year, I should say, my youngest had an English or a French tutor, and the difference was unbelievable. Like, it is so worth the money, parents. If you've ever been on the fence, I assure you, it takes a lot of stress and anxiety off you, but also your child as well. And to see the look on your kid's face when those numbers turn from 2s to 3s to 4s on the report card, no money, doesn't matter. Doesn't matter the cost at all.
Yeah, and like most of the students I have now, I've had for 4 or 5 years, and yeah, like it does take a huge stress off for sure. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I remember going for tutoring in high school for subjects that I was just like, I don't like where my marks are in these. Some people might think they're fine, but they're not what I want. And yeah, tutoring one-on-one just gives you that extra time to be like, oh, that was the piece I was missing. Now it clicks, right? It's not necessarily something that you might do forever.
It doesn't have to be long term. You don't have to commit to a whole year's worth of tutoring.
Right.
And what you can accomplish one-on-one or even in a small group with a tutor is, more than you can do in months at school. And that's, no disrespect to classroom teachers. Their job is next to impossible. I've been there. And I think that's why I got so addicted to tutoring, because I'm like, you're spread so thin in the classroom, and then when I can actually sit one-on-one or in a small group with kids, you just see them like improve so much more quickly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, your socials. Where can people find you and start watching these cool videos we were talking about? She even incorporates Poppets, guys, and we all know how much kids love Poppets.
True. Yeah. Poppets are very versatile. On Instagram, I'm Math Coach Canada. On YouTube, I'm Math Coach Canada. On Facebook, I just have a page for the SN Learning Studio. So if you're like more local, that's where you can find me. But anywhere in the world, YouTube and Instagram. Yeah.
Okay, fantastic. I think it's amazing, and if you wanted to just start up a whole school and bring in every...
There have been discussions.
I always send my kids to you all day, every day, and gotta get things moving in the right direction. I know that sometimes for parents, seeing a tutor might there might be a stigma behind it. You know what I mean? Like, my kid doesn't need a tutor, or my kid needs a tutor, but I don't want people to know they're being tutored. No. Get your kids tutored.
Tutoring is cool.
Tutoring's super cool.
Tutoring at the SN Learning Studio is very cool and very fun.
Well, especially then because you're going into a classroom, you're going into a school.
And the
It's not
group
just-
setting also makes it feel a little more fun. Like, I have kids that are like, Mom, I don't want to go to hockey tonight. I want to go to math. No lie.
No way.
Lie.
She also is the tutor of the Wildcats, so maybe it's the Wildcats. They're like, I'll just stay with Sarah today.
Yeah, that's going to get me
Good
further
news.
in my hockey career.
Maybe.
This practice.
Sorry, I cannot connect you that way.
No, definitely not. Okay, well, thank you so much for your time. We really appreciate you being here and changing my lingo around math as well. I know
Perfect.
that I will not be saying those things to my children any
Awesome.
longer.
Thank you very much.
Thanks so much, Sarah. And thank you all for watching and listening. We'll be back next week.